蠢！同时施展人手被一体。 爽快，它也是个好东西。
Hello, Donghua Nexus friends. Before we continue the story, please support the admin by pressing the subscribe button so I can stay motivated to continue if you enjoy the content. The Kirin dragon stared at Qinmu while gulping down his drink, as if signaling that he was still hungry. Qinmu then brought him to the warehouse to refine a crimson fire spirit pill. From across the Jade Dragon Lake, a Taoist saw the creature appear and wondered why a being as powerful as the dragon lion was suddenly roaming around with a young man. Still, he chose not to pay further attention as long as the two did not use the lake. On their way to the warehouse, Qinmu passed through the royal garden and found a large crowd. Scholars from various residences had gathered together with divine arts practitioners. Cheers tore through the air. Suddenly, someone was thrown up into the sky and landed headfirst into the ground. Qinmu was startled when he realized the person was a prince. Moments later, a girl in green was also flung and stuck against a wall. Qinmu recognized the attack pattern, a signature technique of the Basan lineage, a finishing technique combining arcane arts and close combat. Though lacking in refinement, its destructive power was immense. He suspected the one fighting was Ling Yushu and wondered why she was attacking princes and princesses. The hungry Kirin dragon was growing weaker. Qinmu held himself back from watching any longer and chose to buy the ingredients instead. After obtaining them, he refined the Crimson Fire Spirit Pill, which was devoured immediately by the creature. Still hungry, Qinmu refined another batch. Once full, the Kirin dragon looked lively again and even offered help if needed. But Hu Linger scoffed at him for being afraid of an ox, causing the Kirin dragon to deflate again. The crowd in the garden grew thicker. Discussions shifted toward the seventh princess, who was said to have become far stronger after her journey. She had mastered a combined technique of magic and martial combat, added with the dragon inheritance technique, making her nearly unmatched. Many scholars believed that even practitioners from the divine arts residence would struggle against her. Others, however, doubted the scholar's residence, as the demon housed there was known to be extremely dangerous. And some suspected that demon, Qinmu, had died since he had not been seen for a long time. Suddenly, the crowd split as the Kirin dragon forcefully pushed his way through, terrifying many scholars. Qinmu scolded him for being too conspicuous. Once inside, Qinmu saw Ling Yushu engaged in battle and defeating Prince Minyu. 9 dragons coiled around her body, a mark of mastery over elemental spirit treasures. Qinmu praised her in his heart. Ling Yushu's progress since returning from the Roland Golden Palace was remarkable. Strict training and Basan's guidance, focusing on her weaknesses, had caused her strength to soar rapidly, unlike the Imperial Academy's general system, which focused only on theory. Even so, Qinmu remained baffled by how ferocious Ling Yushu had become. Ling Yushu then noticed his presence, halted the fight, and walked toward him. She scolded Qinmu for disappearing for so long, then informed him that the Grand Chancellor had resigned and had now been replaced by Gu Lunwan. Qinmu was shocked to hear the news. Since many eyes were watching, Ling Yushu invited him to speak in her private room, and Qinmu agreed. But before they could get there, the second prince, Ling Yushu, appeared and refused to let Qinmu enter a woman's chamber. He instead offered his own room, and Ling Yushu agreed with slight embarrassment. In Ling Yusu's residence, they were greeted by an elegant Southern-style arrangement, with palace maids who were courteous yet trained in martial arts. The sound of guqin music from afar added a calm and refined atmosphere. Qin could not hide his admiration. Ling Yusu thanked Qin for once saving his younger sister. Ling Yusu added, in a tone never heard from her before, that she had once cried, thinking Qin had died. This startled Ling Yusu, as his sister had never mentioned it before. Ling Yusu also said she had met Felders from Qin side and that they liked him, leaving Ling Yusu even more confused. With enthusiasm, Ling Yusu spoke about how Chancellor Boson's guidance had made him feel much stronger and more confident. However, he also expressed disappointment because the Chancellor had not chosen them to join the entourage, but instead selected other scholars. The conversation then shifted to Gulinwan, who now served as the Grand Rector. Ling Yusu warned Qin to be careful. According to him, Gulinwan held a long-standing grudge because his sword had once been tricked by Qin. Ling Yusu suggested that the sword be returned to ease the matter, even offering to mediate, but Qin refused. To him, anything recovered from a great ruin did not need to be returned. Ling Yusu stressed that they were now in the empire, not in a lawless ruin. Gulinwan, as Grand Rector, possessed great authority. Qin responded by recalling Gulinwan's past as the Imperial prince's guardian, then questioned whether a man like that would respect a second prince as he did the primary heir. According to Qin, even if the sword were returned, Gulinwan would not yield, and would most likely make things difficult for Ling Yusu as well. Ling Yusu's expression changed. Qin's words struck at the very core of his concern. Gulinwan had powerful connections among high nobles. There was no way he would treat the second prince with respect, and it was far more likely he would look for ways to suppress them. Ling Yusu ultimately decided not to interfere in the matter between Qin and Gulinwan, but still issued a serious warning. In his view, Gulinwan's style was harsh and lacked the broad vision of the previous chancellor. Qin remained calm and was confident that Gulinwan would not dare to act excessively. That confidence puzzled Ling Yusu. He even briefly suspected that Qin might have some special closeness with his younger sister, but he shifted the topic. He revealed his plan to leave the Imperial Academy and lead troops to the frontier. Even so, his concern remained fixed on his younger sister, Ling Yusu. Qin reassured Ling Yusu casually, telling him not to worry too much, but that very composure made Ling Yusu uneasy. He disliked the idea of his sister spending too much time around Qin. After parting ways, Qin returned to the scholar's residence. Ling Yusu watched his back as he walked away, praising Qin's maturity and clarity of judgment, convinced that he would one day become someone great. But Ling Yusu laughed at him. According to her, Qin could not even speak sweetly and had once called her fat. Ling Yusu then planned to resign as a scholar, believing Gulinwan would not favor him. He even offered to take Ling Yusu with him to the frontier if she could not endure staying at the academy. However, Ling Yusu chose to remain longer to study under Chancellor Boson's guidance. She understood her brother's unease, but had no way to change the situation. Meanwhile, Qin returned to the residence accompanied by the Kirin dragon. The scholars looked on with envy. Yunku demanded his robe back since the debt had been paid off, and Hulinger gladly returned it. Hulinger then called for the remaining scholars who still owed debts. Reluctantly, some of them came forward to redeem their debt notes. Hulinger even offered a discount if they were willing to be beaten by Qin again. Someone then reminded them that Qin was now an imperial official. No one would dare lay a hand on him anymore. Hulinger began to worry that their source of income would dry up, while the Kirin dragon complained about food. Qin calmed them both, then asked for dragon saliva to be exchanged for money. Hulinger handed over a bottle, and Qinmu left for the Supreme Healing Hall. At the hall, several court physicians welcomed him eagerly but with caution, fearing he might be carrying poison. Qinmu reassured them and showed that he brought a miraculous medicine. The physicians were amazed and asked whether the medicine could reattach severed limbs. Qinmu answered yes, as long as the tendons and nerves could still be manually reconnected. Physician Yu almost cut off someone's limb for testing, but was stopped. In the end, they used the crane owned by Sealing Yun that had once been injured. After the crane's leg was cut off, Qinmu reattached it with precision. The bird immediately stood and cried out as if in gratitude. Sealing Yun was greatly impressed and accepted Qinmu's recipe to heal the remaining wounds. He even forgave the past incident when Qinmu struck him in front of the emperor. Qinmu then asked about the price of the medicine. The physicians agreed on 10,000 prosperity coins per bottle. Qinmu agreed to supply 1 bottle a day, causing the physicians to cheer at the thought of great profit. But as he left the healing hall, his steps halted. Gulinwan blocked his path. With an unreadable smile, Gulian demanded the return of the sword that had once been tricked out of his possession. Qinmu firmly refused and reminded him that he was now an official of the empire. If Gulian dared to harm him, even the emperor would have cause to punish his entire family. Gulinan released his terrifying demonic qi as he threatened Qinmu. Yet Qinmu stayed calm. Just as the situation was about to break, Chancellor Basan's voice sounded, warning Gulinan not to lay a hand on his student. Gulinan only laughed before dissolving into a mist of demonic qi. Chancellor Basan immediately gave chase, eager to fight, leaving Qinmu sighing at being unable to witness the battle. Qinmu returned to the scholar's residence. Hulinger greeted him and informed him that a guest was waiting. Qinmu was shocked when he learned the guest was the Imperial teacher of eternal peace. With a voice laden with implication, the teacher addressed Qinmu, seeming intrigued that a leader of the heavenly demon sect was now enrolled as a scholar in the Imperial Academy. The presence of such a figure shook Qinmu. He tried to remain polite, asking Hulinger to prepare tea even though they had none. The atmosphere turned awkward when not even a proper seat was available. The Imperial teacher declined any preparations. He came only to speak. His face was calm. The longer one looked, the more peaceful it seemed, yet his eyes were sharp, as if able to see the core of all things. Qinmu could not hide his admiration for that legendary reformer, a man who had reshaped the empire far more profoundly than any emperor, reforming the military, education, and abolishing sect divisions by creating a school system. Yet behind that respect was unease. The teacher's methods often involved coercion and cunning to silence political opponents. In Qinmu's view, he was too cold, too sharp, perhaps too ruthless to be called an ordinary man. They assessed one another in silence. The Imperial teacher identified Qinmu as a young leader of the heavenly demon sect, then tested him. Was he not afraid of being killed? Qinmu answered flatly, "If I am killed, they will rebel. If I am not, what is there to fear?" The Imperial teacher called the answer overconfident, yet admitted the words struck true. He asked again why the sect would surely rebel. Qinmu replied, "Because we share the same philosophy." The conversation shifted to the internal reform of the heavenly demon sect, particularly the establishment of the school hall. The Imperial teacher warned that the sect could one day grow into a country within a country if left unchecked. Qinmu responded calmly, saying that the Eternal Peace Empire itself had already become a larger version of the heavenly demon sect, thus there was no reason to rebel. But he also made it clear that if one day the Imperial teacher betrayed the sacred philosophy they upheld, then the heavenly demon sect would not hesitate to rise against him. That answer made the Imperial teacher fall silent for a moment, and in the end, he acknowledged Qinmu's bravery. The Imperial teacher admitted that he had initially intended to make use of Qinmu, but he abandoned that intention after realizing that someone with a will and mind of his own like Qinmu was far too dangerous to control. He compared Qinmu to other great sects that were equally difficult to persuade. Fortunately, the views of the Heavenly Demon sect and the Empire did not contradict one another. Qinmu then asked whether the other sects would be eliminated. The answer depended on whether their doctrines could be manifested in reality. If they failed to practice their teachings, they were not a threat. But if they succeeded, they would be too powerful to be allowed to live. Qinmu grew curious about the Imperial teacher's philosophy. The answer he received was simple: do not judge through words, but through actions. Knowledge is action, and action is knowledge. Qinmu realized that he had not yet reached the height needed to comprehend the depth of this man's thinking. He was not yet able to judge whether this figure was an ally or an enemy. But for the survival of his sect, he voiced support for the Empire and asked whether his sect would be destroyed once the rebellion ended. The answer? No. The Heavenly Demon sect was regarded instead as a sword that ensured power would not stray from the righteous path. Qinmu felt a slight tremor in his heart. The figure before him seemed unlike ordinary men, as if devoid of emotion and free of personal desire. Even the Kirin dragon living in his residence claimed it could see the man, yet could not sense his presence. Qinmu regretted not using the green heavenly eye to reveal this man's true nature, as he once did with the village chief's celestial body. Outside the residence, Qinyu was waiting. The Imperial teacher stepped out and remarked that the Grand Chancellor's judgment regarding the successor of the sect was indeed correct, though the similarity in character between Qinmu and himself made him uncomfortable, as if seeing an unfinished reflection of his own self. After the Imperial teacher departed, only then could Qinmu breathe in relief. He realized how powerful the man's influence was. A person firmly bound to his ideals was truly astonishing. If what that man desired was a sword aimed eternally at his throat, then the Heavenly Demon sect must truly become that sword. Qinmu returned to his training, refining the unification technique he had derived from the 3 elixir arts. He sprinted through the mountains like lightning while pondering the structure of the technique and aligning it with the demon cannon. In the midst of speed that tore through boundaries, his mind instead grew sharper and calmer. Though his conversation with the Imperial teacher had been brief, its content stirred him deeply and reignited his resolve. Standing before such an extraordinary being had widened his horizon and forced him to challenge his limits. His steps gradually slowed as vital qi began to circulate through the new version of the 3 elixirs body of the Overlord, a combined technique built upon the foundations of the Heavenly Demon scripture. His previous technique had been a mere baseline without inherent attributes, unlike divine arts that carried elements such as thunder, lightning, or fire. That fundamental technique was strong as a foundation, but limited in offense and defense. Now, under Qinmu's hands, it began to ascend a level toward a more perfected form for the future of his sect. After learning from the woodcutter and developing the unity technique, Qinmu managed to awaken the hidden potential of the old technique he had been using. What had once functioned merely as groundwork was now merged with combat arts, spells, and body refinement, transforming into a single, complete, and far more powerful technique. Each leader of the Heavenly Demon sect possessed his own version of the unity technique. The young patriarch's expectation was that Qinmu would fuse the 3 elixirs technique with that principle. Yet Qinmu chose otherwise. Rather than replacing the foundation, he decided to perfect his old technique. He reinforced what had been ingrained since childhood. Even though he was not entirely sure that the choice was correct, he followed instinct. In the process, he mended the deficiencies of his older technique with new insight on the body and soul. He integrated the principles of body refinement from the scripture of 9 transformations into the 3 elixirs, making it vastly stronger. He had long yearned for a powerful body refinement method, yet no teachers had ever given him one, so he found it himself. As the new technique ran, vital qi flowed through his entire body, skin, muscles, tendons, even marrow, repairing everything thoroughly. The previously simple qi circulation route now reached every part of his body and even helped refine the soul. Once his body began to accept those benefits, his steps slowed until he stopped to assess the flaws in the technique. The main structure was complete, only smaller refinements remained. However, this refinement of body and soul created a new problem. His body lacked nutrients. The sensation was like parched earth suddenly flooded by a storm. The 9 transformations consisted of alterations of body and vital qi, with 3 stages concerning the bone, unity, steel, and mountain strength. Qinmu had only just entered the first stage. Unknowingly, half a day passed, and he arrived at the Vault of Heavenly Records. A secretary who saw his pale face warned that he could lose his life if he didn't stop cultivating. Qinmu was briefly confused, but then his body suddenly gave out and he collapsed. His skin dried and clung to his bones. Clothing once fitting now hung loose. In mere hours, his body had been drained dry. The longer the technique ran, the faster his body shriveled, and if left unchecked, he could die of complete depletion.
他再厉害，也是个大虚器皿。今时不同往日了，按照旧族独自栽培出来的，跟那些宗派没有区别。杀！杀猪刀必飞。
器皿又如何？
飞行的人，你倒行逆施，我要替你。
狮子，要叫你从巷尾输到巷头。启明，破绽已出，这到底如何是天王宫一刀头斩落皇帝的头颅？谁敢偷我的东西？一是变教为国，圣教要立国，则需远离也。60堂只。